Like you and I right now, as we record this, we are sitting in a hotel room in California.
Yeah.
Right. So we are not back home in Seattle. We are sitting in our hotel room recording a podcast off site. Hello, and welcome to a purpose-driven marriage podcast. We are Duane and Nadine Stewart, and we love any and all things marriage. You've tuned into the right place if you're looking for actionable, practical tips to help you overcome real-life obstacles common to real relationships. We're here to help you strive for a marriage as God has designed it and not as the world has defined it. Because why settle for a good marriage when you can have a great one?
Hey, y'all.
So we have an interesting topic today. We are talking about red flags that every married couple should notice. And we have 8 that we've come up with.
Yeah.
And, the whole purpose of this is not because we're all trying to strive for perfection in our marriage, because there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like we go through seasons. There's, a variety of different things that we go through in our marriage. And there's a lot of good times, a lot of getting along, a lot of doing the right things, a lot of the love and all the feels in marriage, right? But then there's also some challenging times, especially when you're raising kids or, you're balancing career, life, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be some challenging times. So the goal isn't necessarily perfection, right? But it's more so it's oneness, it's that connection. And from time to time, when we get so busy, like when life just begins to happen, there are these things that can begin to creep up in our marriage. And it can creep up without us even realizing that it's happening.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I talk all the time about intentionality with couples. And so being intentional about just keeping an eye out, like keeping your feelers out there just to make sure that these things, these red flags are not showing up. And when they do, do something to fix it. And we'll talk about that too, right?
Yeah. You don't know what to correct unless you know what to correct. You know that it's there, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about course correction. Of course, I always think about it in sports analogies. And for anything like in golf or baseball, if you hit the ball and it goes a certain way, not the way that you want it to go, you know based on the ball flight that okay, this is what I need to do to make it go straight, right? And so what we're going to talk about today is more like that. When you notice these things, you say, oh, you know what? No, that ball is going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I'm noticing this now. Before I didn't notice it, but now I do notice the issue. So let's go ahead and make these changes to make that course or that ball go straight.
You know what that reminds me of? It's actually a story that you told me when you went and got some coaching for your golf. And you said that, it's different. I'm not a golfer, so I'm not sure. I don't even know why I brought this up. Yes, I have clubs. I've got the outfits. I've got the shoes and everything.
Shoot on the golf course. But...
Yes, but I can't play. And so, but I remember when you got coaching from that lady. She was like in the senior LPGA or something like that.
She was in the LPGA, but she's a senior now.
Yeah, she's a senior now. But she was showing you how, like, just little tweaks in the way that you were doing things. Because when you would go out there to play golf, you'd come home frustrated most days.
Right.
But apparently there were these things that you were doing in your game.
Knowing how that
you didn't even realize you were doing it. And so she recognized it.
Pointing out all my flaws.
Yeah. No, she helped you course correct.
That's right.
Right? She helped you to see the red flags in your golf game. Is that the right terminology, your golf game?
Yeah.
Yeah, she helped you see the red flags in your swing, in your stance, in even where you were looking, where the follow through was. She fixed that for you.
Yeah.
And now I think you're better.
Yeah.
I think you're better.
Yeah.
I sure. All that coaching you're paying for. Right. So anyway, so that's those are all the sports analogies I think I can come up with. Like that's all I've got. So we'll go ahead and get started. So anyway, so we'll start with the first one, right? So a red flag that you want to keep an eye out for, and if you start seeing it, let's fix it.
Yeah.
The first one is when you start to notice that emotions are being dismissed or minimized.
Yeah.
Right? When you're starting to ignore those feelings, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a tough one, because when you start to dismiss emotions of your spouse, that means you're starting to not be as emotional either. Does that make sense? Or it's not as meaningful to you, or you're starting to not care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it certainly feels like that.
Yeah, because when you think about it, the last thing for me that I want you to do is feel sad or frustrated or whatever based on something that I've done, and I want to fix it. But there may be a time when you get that way and I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
What does that typically mean?
Well, it reminds me of, remember that episode that we did on gaslighting, right? When someone says, "Hey, I'm feeling such and such a way,"
Right.
and
You're
their spouse responds to them with, "No, you don't," or "You shouldn't be feeling like that." Right? Like that. When someone starts to make me think that my feelings are crazy, right, or they're irrelevant, they're not valid, you know, it can sometimes make it feel like I'm being gaslit, right, which is that's not the topic of this particular episode, but it is, you know, it falls along the same lines of when you begin to dismiss each other's feelings as unimportant simply because it may not feel important to you, or you think you know what the other person is feeling or already feeling, and so therefore you don't even give them the opportunity to be able to express it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you cut them off before before they even get a chance to really articulate and express what they're feeling. And so when you start to notice that in your relationship, like when that becomes a pattern, or even if one of you maybe is noticing it and the other one is not, and you want to bring it up, one way you can overcome that and really try to eliminate that from your communication is to start practicing active listening. Right? And so what does that mean? What does active listening mean?
Well, active listening is, number one, being in an environment where there is no distractions, right? So you have the undivided attention of your spouse, and then you are listening and hearing what your spouse is saying, but not just that, but the best way to do that is to repeat back to them what they are saying. And so the reason why you do that is simply because you want to know that is what I'm hearing exactly what you're trying to say. And if that's the case, then we're on the right track. So then you move forward. And at that point, then you start asking clarifying questions and, follow-up questions or whatever it is, just to dig deeper and to get to the root of whatever they're feeling.
Yeah, well, I think I've mentioned before that I've witnessed this myself, where most of our arguments, when it comes to not understanding each other is really about different topics. It's about different things. We often end up fighting over different things because we assume we understand what the other person's talking about, but really we're not hearing what the feeling is, right? What the impact is on them. And so when we practice active listening, it realigns us so that we're on the same page, right? And so if you were trying to convey to me, what the impact is of my actions, right? What your feelings are. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of, well, that wasn't my intention. And so therefore your feelings must not be valid.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to end up making you feel dismissed.
Yeah, so you're discounting how I'm responding and how I feel based on what you said.
Exactly. So if I were to practice active listening and I repeat back to you what it was that you were trying to articulate to me, like, hey, I'm feeling such and such a way, with this situation that just happened, me simply repeating it back to you already will make you feel validated. It's harder for me to dismiss your feelings if I'm repeating back to you what you just said to me.
Exactly what you said,
Right? So anyway, so we'll continue on, but that is the first red flag, right? When you start to notice that your emotions are minimized or being dismissed, you don't want that.
Nope.
And so you want to, really just get on the same page and make sure you guys understand what each other is going through, right? The feelings that you're experiencing.
The next one, I see a red flag for sure, because I see this not sometimes with us, but most of the time I hear people talk about it. And it's when your connection feels more like like you're just coexisting in the house together. You're not talking to each other. You may communicate, okay, I'm going here, you're going there, but there's no meaningful conversation. There's no deep conversation. There's no concern or even interest in the other person's well-being or what's going on with them, throughout the day, or how they're feeling about life right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's none of that. There's like no conversation whatsoever. Oh, what's for dinner? Okay, I'm gonna eat dinner, or whatever. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do tomorrow. But it's really nothing about like actual feelings and things that are meaningful.
Yeah, I actually think that's the extreme case of it. I think the red flag can show up much sooner than that when it's not even that they have stopped talking.
Yeah.
Right? It's not even that, but it's more so when they are still talking, but it isn't connecting.
Yeah.
It's really just operational conversations.
Right.
Who's going to pick up the kids? What are we having for dinner? It's no longer showing interest in each other's world and really sitting down and, taking the time to hear about it, to listen to what your spouse is saying, right? So you can live in the same house, not be fighting with each other, right? Like you guys could high five each other at the end of the day because kids got picked up and taken to wherever they needed to go, and you have the same number of kids, at home as you started with in the morning, right? Like you feel good, right? Like you've accomplished those things, but you're not necessarily connecting with each other.
So you're basically living two lives parallel to each other. But
you're like roommates, you're business partners, right? But you're not intimate.
Yeah.
The intimate connection's not there. And when you start to notice that, it's really important that you create intentional time.
Yeah.
To either to get away, like you and I right now, as we record this, we are sitting in a hotel room in California.
Yeah.
Right. So we are not back home in Seattle. We are sitting in our hotel room recording a podcast off site.
Yeah.
And so, because as you said, this is something that we've experienced in our relationship. I mean, 6 kids, right? It's sometimes you can't help but just put on your, hey, got to get this done.
Yeah. You're the COO at this point, right? You're just making sure that everything operates correctly.
Exactly.
You go here, you go there, dinner's made, kids get to practice, whatever it is, and you get to work on time, whatever it is. And that's what you do. That's kind of your job is to orchestrate the family to make sure that everything runs smoothly.
Yes, but in our effort to do that, and it's, with the very best intentions, we can sometimes run out of time for us.
Yep.
Right? So we are no longer a priority, but we're at the bottom of that list because we're trying to take care of everyone's needs. And so when that happens, you plan time to get together.
Yeah.
Even if it's just making sure the kids go to bed on time and then the two of you go into your bedroom at the end of the evening after dinner and you sit there and you talk.
Yeah.
Right? It's just all about reconnecting, finding your way back to each other and making a regular habit of doing that. Right? Like the time that you and I spend away, even if it's just for a weekend away, is priceless. It's absolutely fantastic. But that's not the reality for most people. A lot of people, their kids are not old enough, or there isn't the means, there isn't whatever it might be. And so what I've found for us, for our relationship, is that the daily intentionality has actually been far more effective.
Yes.
For keeping us connected than even, just getting away.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the getting away is not going to be every day, right?
No,
I mean, it's not going to be every weekend. So I think that if you can get away twice a year, awesome, right? But you can't. What do we do on the in-between?
Exactly.
So the in-betweens is date nights.
Yep.
Right? You have a date night maybe every other week or at least once a month. You try to get out, and especially if you have smaller kids, I understand that sometimes that is difficult to do. So you get out and you have a night just to yourself. Or you have those daily check-ins, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, that's what we do.
After everybody's gone to bed or right when you get home, right?
Yep.
As soon as you get home, that's the time for you to just, retreat into the back room or the bedroom or the front, wherever it's quietest, so that you guys can just have one-on-one intentional time with each other. That's, to me, and that's kind of what we've tried to do, at least once a day, is how we stay connected.
Yep, exactly. I love those daily connections right before bed. So the next red flag that we have is when
it's a big one.
Oh, this is a really big one. Yes. So when you start to notice criticisms or defensiveness showing up frequently, I mean, they will show up from time to time in conversation, but when it begins to be a habit, just a regular part of the conversations, it's when you're hearing the words, you always or you never, right? Those words triggers. Really, I couldn't remember the word to use, but those really can trigger those feelings of criticism, right? And then it makes the other person feel the need to defend themselves, right? So when those words, when criticism or defensiveness starts to creep into your conversations more and more frequently, something needs to happen.
That's right.
Right? An adjustment needs to be made. Yeah. And that's when we need to reintroduce that I feel
you're good at this one, so this is all the time.
This is
just take it.
Yep, this is what I tell people. So this model, right? So I feel blank when or about blank, and what I need is this, is blank, right? And so, it's very easy, especially if the other red flags are happening. Yeah. Right? If we're feeling like our feelings don't matter, or feeling dismissed, or not connecting, those types of things, it can feel like our needs are not being met. And when our needs are not being met, we can't help but feel like we need to lash out in order to be heard. But what happens is that can come across as an attack, right? When someone starts a conversation with you with, you never listen to me, or you never do this, or you always do that.
And the obvious response is to protect yourself, because you don't want to be blamed for, whatever it is. If you start off like that, even if it is valid, the person that you're directing it towards will get defensive right away.
Oh yeah, well, because
unless they have super disciplines, right?
Oh yes. I mean, think about it. In 96% of the time, the way you begin a conversation is the way it will end, right? 96% of the time. I don't know if you're seeing a pattern here, babe. Yeah. But this all has to do with connection. Yeah. Right? Like when these things are showing up in your relationship, it's creating a disconnect between you. Right. Right? And so when you're not connecting, we have a tendency to feel like our needs are not being understood, they're not being met, and so we can come across very critical in the way that we bring something up. But when we do that, it actually more often than not will not end well. And so then that does not lead to connection, but further disconnect. And so the way that we deal with this is that I feel statement, right? I feel blank when or about blank, and what I need is this. I felt unheard when I asked for the garbage to be taken out last night. And what I need is the garbage to be taken out each night before bed. Yeah. Right? And so that was a very simple example.
Very simple. And I don't take the garbage out. The kids do.
but
I do take the garbage out, actually. But
anyway. I was just demonstrating how that I feel model works.
Yeah, and so practice that. It's super important. And it will lead to more, softer startup, but also more meaningful and substantive conversations.
Yes. So what's our next one?
So the next one is just sweeping stuff under the rug. So avoiding difficult conversations. I think that's a tough one, because I've definitely been a victim of that.
A victim?
A victim, yes. I'm the victim. What? I've definitely done that before. Because sometimes it is, sometimes I just don't want to have those conversations. You know what I mean? I just don't feel like it, I know what needs to be said, and I know what it's gonna feel like, because it could be something where I'm like, okay, I got to fix this, but I'm just in denial. I don't want to do it. Yeah. Right. But the more you do that, you have to recognize that, like for you, if I'm sweeping it under the rug, you still have those feelings, and it's still kind of brewing inside of you. If it comes up again, then it's gonna be worse. Yeah. So in my opinion and from my experience, it's 100% better, 1,000% better if I just address it right away, instead of letting it simmer and marinate for a while and grow bigger than it actually started. If you addressed it in the beginning, it wouldn't be that big, but if you leave it for a while, it's going to continue to grow, and it's going to be worse. And so now we got to deal with the situation, but also the increased emotional aspect of it, because it's been sitting around in yourself for a long time.
Well, I'll actually take it one step further. And so here's a different perspective on that same idea. So you're saying when you prefer to avoid difficult conversations and you prefer to sweep things under a rug.
Yeah.
But what about, actually, I'm going to restate that.
I don't prefer that. But yeah.
Oh, you don't prefer it?
No.
So
that would be my tendency to do that.
Oh, that's what. So
avoid...
your tendency is to avoid difficult conversations. But how about when a person feels the need to avoid difficult conversations because to them, they feel like they're walking on eggshells, because that's another red flag that falls under the same umbrella, right? And so it's not that they want to avoid difficult conversations, it's that they feel like they need to.
Okay.
Right? They need to avoid these conversations because when they have it, maybe it doesn't end well.
The other person reacts negatively.
Exactly. They react negatively
to that, and now it's going to make things worse.
Yes, a fight ensues.
Right.
And so they say, you know what, I would rather not even have these conversations, even though I really want to.
Right.
I feel like it's needed, but I am walking on eggshells here because anytime I try to bring up something like this, they get defensive
it turns into a fight.
It turns into a fight, and they really would prefer to avoid conflict because their desire is to be able to have these conversations but be heard, right? And so if you're starting to experience that, right? So whether it's you recognizing that you have a tendency to avoid these conversations just because you don't like them, right? They're hard, and so you don't want to have them. Or if you're at a point where one of you feels like you can't have difficult conversations, where you're walking on eggshells around each other, that's not good. That's a red flag, and you can't have that. It's time, at that point, to set aside just an honest but a respectful conversation, right? Where you guys are humbly coming together, maybe pray together first and just talk about how you've been feeling, talk about your observation, but do so in a calm way so that it doesn't end up turning into an argument, turning into a fight or a conflict that you can't get out of.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with that. If you're upfront with your feelings and how you really approach it, and sometimes just being super thoughtful about, like, this is how I've been thinking about this issue that we're having. And I've been going back and forth on how I need to start it, what are the things that I need to say to make sure that we have a good substantive conversation, because I'm mindful of how you feel about this. But I also want to address like how I feel about it. It's if you kind of go at it that way, because you've done this before. I'm like, okay, you've really thought about this, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So that I think calms down. That would calm me down.
Yeah.
And I think it would lead me to just approach that conversation from a different way, right? From a different perspective, because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be selfish in this way. I'm not going to be defensive. I'm not going to blow up, even though, I might feel a certain way. I need to think about this a little bit differently so that we can have a different result.
And honestly, babe, I think if someone was the type of person that doesn't allow these conversations, I think they would know that about themselves, right? And so I think, like, I challenge anyone out there who knows that their spouse has difficulty coming to them about whatever it is that they want to talk to them about, where they know that their spouse feels like they have to walk on eggshells, maybe because they've shared it with them or they've observed it, because you'd have to be blind to not see that your spouse is like, can't even have this conversation with my wife or my husband, right? Like, if you're that person that's hard to approach, do something about it, right? Like, call yourself out, humbly confess that to your spouse and just say, hey, you know what? I realize I've been this way and I'm so sorry. I have not created a safe space for you to be able to come to me with anything, because as husband and wife, that level of connection and intimacy between us that should exist like only between the two of us is lacking.
Yeah.
And I need to change that.
Right.
Because you should be able to come to me about anything. And you should be able to talk to me about anything, knowing I will hear you, knowing I will stop and create that space for you to be able to have these conversations with me.
And if your spouse can't come to you to talk about those really important things, they're going to find somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
It could be a girlfriend or whoever, and that's just not. You don't want your spouse going anywhere else.
Yeah.
To talk about things that are important like that. You want them to talk to you first. You want to be the first one they think about. And
you know what I've been noticing lately, and this is a complete side note, but I've had multiple clients recently tell me they've been going to Chat GPT.
I've heard that about a lot of things.
No, but seriously,
Yeah,
like
ChatGPT.
this is like
ChatGPT
intimate
is
conversations.
not your counselor.
No, these are intimate conversations that they'd like to have with their spouse, but they feel like they can't. So they go to Chat GPT and they ask, Chat GPT.
Yeah, help me feel better about this. Chat
Yeah,
GPT.
exactly. It's a sad time in our society if you have to go to an artificial intelligence for the kind of connection and intimacy that we yearn for from our spouse.
Yeah.
Like that's so sad.
That's
bad. So we need to keep our eye out in our relationship for that red flag and do something about it. Like have the conversation and reconnect with one another again.
I agree.
So the next one.
So the next one is when affection, when sex, or just, anything, any type of just physical touch starts to lack or starts to become, it starts to go from a lot to a little to nothing. That's when, that's another red flag.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not even kissing anymore, that's the strangest thing.
I think holding hands, hugging, kissing, that's all in the ballpark.
Yeah. I find it so fascinating that one of the first things that people do, I mean, think about when you and your spouse just met, right? Like the first thing you do is you hold hands and then you kiss, right? And then like it continues on from there.
Love, then comes marriage, and then comes the baby and the baby carriage.
Exactly. But it's interesting though, because when things start to fall off, they fall off in that same way too.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not always about the sex, but it's more so the intimacy between you, right? When the intimacy starts to go away, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Right? You need to pay attention to that. When you're no longer kissing, when you're no longer hugging, like that, I actually have to give that as a homework assignment for a lot of couples where I make them go back home and I tell them, this is your homework assignment.
Go
you
make out.
need to kiss for 6 seconds. Right? You need to kiss for 6 seconds. You need to hug for 20 seconds, right? Because they've lost that habit.
Accustomed not to not doing it.
Yeah.
But don't you feel like the emotional intimacy has to come before the physical?
I think they are equally important.
Okay.
I think you would be very hard pressed to find a healthy, thriving marriage that has one but not the other. Right? Even if we say, well, we're building the emotional intimacy first and then we'll get to the physical intimacy.
Yeah.
In marriage, you need both.
Yeah.
You really need both. Right? But I'm not even just talking about sex. I'm talking about just the intentional attempt to connect with each other. Right? It is the putting your hand on the small of my back. It is me reaching out and giving you like a reassuring pat on your leg, right? So like those types of things.
These are intentional gestures
Yes.
that shows your spouse
Yes.
that you care for them. Like little tiny things, you know what I mean? Brushing their hair, brushing your hand in their hair, or, putting their hand on the small of your back, or holding hands, or just putting your arm around. If I put my arm around you, this is just all physical touch.
Yes.
That shows your significant other that, hey, I'm thinking about you and I care for you. And I'm just trying to be around you.
Yeah, well, research backs it up because research shows that couples that touch more often have a higher relationship satisfaction.
Yeah.
And so when you're starting to lose that, where you're no longer, sharing the same bed, you're no longer holding hands, you're no longer giving each other kisses, good morning or have a good day or hello, welcome home, then that's an issue and you need to get that back. So as many touches as you can throughout the day, that's super healthy for a relationship.
No punches and no slaps. Please.
No. Affectionate touches. Yes. So what's the next red flag?
All right. So next one is, hiding, just being secretive. You don't want that. But when you feel the need to hide your phone, to hide text messages, to hide like purchases, like things that you bought or just emotions, whatever it is, or friends or whatever, that's a problem.
Yeah, when you begin to hide anything,
Yeah.
right? When you start living in a world within your own mind that your spouse
Is not aware of.
or your, like new hobbies that you're taking up, addictions, right? People that get on the internet and start looking stuff up that they shouldn't be looking at.
Different relationships that you're having outside of your marriage,
Outside of your marriage.
With the opposite sex or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Transparency is so important in relationships because that helps to build trust.
Yeah.
Right? That trust that you're talking about. It's so important, especially now that we have like everything's on our phones, social media, the people that reach out to us that we don't tell our spouse about, like those types of things. Like there needs to be transparency about that. Like we cannot be having these conversations, these relationships, these interactions, emotions, any of those things. Like that should not be happening.
Yeah. I feel like we are naturally inquisitive people or observational beings, right? So when we notice something that is like, oh, right, I just noticed something that seems a little off.
Yeah.
And then you start to investigate. And then you start to, check on things that you don't normally check on. And all of a sudden you're like, well, what are you doing over there? What'd you do with this? Why do you have this receipt? And all of a sudden you're questioning things where if there was a high amount of trust, a high level of trust involved, you wouldn't even look twice, right?
Well, yeah, but the trust comes from the transparency.
Yeah.
Right? The transparency comes first, right? When we're not hiding things, everything's out in the open.
Yeah.
There's no reason to lack trust.
That's right.
Right? And so if you start to notice that you're keeping things to yourself, meeting with people without telling your spouse, sharing things with other people that you're not sharing with your spouse, you need to fix that.
Yeah.
You need to create that transparency. Exactly. So the next red flag is disrespect, contempt. Yeah. When you start to, this actually hurts my heart when I think about this, but when you start to think of your spouse as being like beneath you almost, right? Like when you're making jokes at their expense, when they're doing that to you, when there's name calling starting to happen, right? It might be in jest, just for fun, right? In the beginning, but then after a while it starts to hurt. Right? When there's eye rolling that's happening, when you start to mock each other, when you start to even talk about them in a way that pokes fun at them. Like, oh my gosh, my husband, he can't figure anything out.
Especially poking fun at their insecurities or things that they don't do well. That's, if ladies, if you want to lose your husband emotionally, like the fastest way to do that is to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Disrespect is just the absolute worst thing. That's the thing that we crave as men. And with our wives, we just want to be the hero for them. We want to be the person that they look up to and say, wow, what I mean? It's my husband. I love when you do this or that, all those different things. But if we feel like we don't have the respect of our wives, then it's very difficult.
Yeah, well, the same thing goes for when there's some husbands that may talk down to their wife. Like, oh, they can't do math. They've got the girl math thing going on, or whatever it might be, right? Like just talking down to them. That also hurts the relationship. Right. That is also a form of contempt. And so anytime you start putting yourself in a position of like perceived superiority over the other person, that's not cool. That's a red flag. In fact, Dr. John Gottman talks about contempt as one of the four horsemen. Right? And contempt, he says, he's found in his studies, has been the number one predictor of divorce. So this is a big deal. This is a really big deal.
If you see that creeping up in your relationship, in your marriage, then you need to squash that right away.
You don't want that. You do not want that anywhere in your relationship. And so...
How do we fix it?
How do we fix it? Well, you replace contempt with gratitude. You replace contempt with affection. Like rather than disrespecting your spouse, think about the things that you appreciate about your spouse.
That's what I was thinking. Appreciation.
Yep.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Don't you do kind of a thing with couples where You have them think about the good things, like the things that they loved about their spouse, even from the very, very beginning. Even if they can't think of anything right now, let's go back 20 years or 10 years or whatever it is. And whatever that thing was that you loved about them, all right, let's dwell on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you get to a point in your marriage where you're starting to vocalize these feelings of contempt, when you're starting to poke fun at your spouse at their expense, these are not new feelings. There's a really good chance you were thinking it for a while. You were feeling this way for a while, and now it's just gotten to the point where you are letting it out, right? Like you are making it known. You're now being disrespectful. And so,
especially when you do it in front of other people, then
oh my gosh, that's the worst. That is the worst. And so where you correct it first is where it originated from, which is in your mind, in your thoughts. So you need to change the way that you think about your spouse. So rather than thinking about your spouse from, position of disrespect, or you thinking that there's something wrong with them, like a deficiency with them, think about them from a perspective of affection or gratitude. So I tell my clients to think about something you love, admire, respect, or appreciate. And dwell on those things, right? I think it's Philippians 4:8 that tells us to do that in the Bible, right? And so when you think about like whatever is true, whatever is good, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is...
Meditate on
meditate on those things. And when you start to do that, your brain will prove you correct. Your brain will begin to believe whatever you tell it. And so you start with what you allow your mind to dwell on and allow your actions to follow. So that's how you deal with that red flag. But you want to remove that as quickly as possible as well. And the last one that we have on our list today is number 8. So when you've gotten to the point in your relationship where it feels like you guys have stopped dreaming or growing together, almost like you feel like you're losing your shared purpose. Right? I think it kind of almost goes back to the first one where it's like you're living just parallel lives.
No, the second one.
Or was that the second one? Yeah, when you're living in kind of parallel lives, you're just kind of going through the motions of marriage, but you're not really growing. Right? You're going, but you're not growing together.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah. And so when you start to feel like that, at least one of you is feeling disconnected. Right? And so I think it's really important to find your way back towards each other and remember. Like I tell people, remembering is so beneficial. Remembering your why. Remembering what brought you guys together. Remembering the things that you used to dream about together. And even remembering what God's purpose is for your marriage in the first place. And then fixing your eyes on that as a couple.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
That's good. I don't even know if I need to add to that one, Nadine. Because, I mean, honestly, regardless of if you feel like it or not, you're both growing. You're both changing all the time.
Yeah.
And if you are not changing together and with the same purpose in mind or with the same destination, you're going to start growing apart. You're going to start changing apart. And before you know it, you're going to look up and, we're going to be a half a block away from each other. You know what I mean? Or half a mile or whatever you want to say. You're going to not be together in oneness. And so that's where we want to change things. Remember your purpose. Remember what you're married for, right? And if you are a Christian, which we are, it's just kind of reconnecting and understanding and remembering what God designed marriage for, and that's to bring glory to Him. So if we really start thinking about, how do we reconnect, it's going back to the beginning and making sure that God is the center of that.
Yeah. How do you make sure that this isn't happening? Or if you found that you're starting to get to this point in your relationship, how do you course correct? And I really think that sitting down and just talking, like talking about the things that you used to talk about, talking about your goals, talking about your dreams, putting together a marriage mission statement, right? Like we have that template actually on our website on apurposedrivenmarriage.com. And so if you guys don't have that yet, and we're getting into the new year. Exactly. So this would be a great time to start having those conversations, but just reconnecting, realigning remembering what your purpose is and finding that purpose again together, because your marriage is either going to drift apart or it's going to drift together. And you want to do everything that you can to make sure that it is always drifting towards each other.
That's right. I love it.
All right.
High five.
So high five. Well, you thought I was going to high five you? All right, let's high five. All right. Well, I think that's everything. That's all we've got. And so, well, thank you guys so much for listening today. And we'll see you next time as you continue to grow in your purpose-driven marriage. Bye.